Supremacy Epic looked at Lin Feng in surprise, as if he wanted to see through Lin Feng. You have a way to deal with the celestial devil ancestor? Supremacy Epic did not believe it. Of course he knew that Lin Feng was a true controller who had transformed into a universe. He was the person with the greatest chance of becoming a 3-star supremacy, or even a Kiliacosm sovereign. However, if this was the first epic or even the second or third epic, Lin Feng had a 100% chance of becoming a 3-star supremacy, and even a high chance of becoming a Kiliacosm sovereign. With the Supreme Pagoda protecting Lin Feng could survive the epical cataclysm again and again. Then, with the accumulation over 9 epics, one day in the 9th epical cataclysm, Lin Feng would have a chance to obtain the small Kiliacosm origin and become a true Kiliacosm sovereign. However, all of this required time. At the very least, Lin Feng had to be born in the 2nd or 3rd epic, or at least not later than the 5th epic. Otherwise, there was too little time for him to accumulate, and he could not possibly become a Kiliacosm sovereign at all. As for now, Lin Feng had only slowly risen to power at the end of the 9th epic. At this time, it was very difficult to even become a 3-star supremacy, let alone anything else. Supremacy Epic saw through Lin Feng almost at a glance. Even with so many resources, he definitely would not be able to become a 3-star supremacy in 100 years. If he could not become a 3-star supremacy, he would not be able to stop the Celestial Devil Emperor. Lin Feng said in a low voice, "Supremacy Epic, perhaps I can't stop Celestial Devil Emperor, but if we join forces, there's still a trace of hope. Join forces." Supremacy Epic shook his head and said, "Dark Domain Supremacy, you don't know how strong the Celestial Devil Ancestor is at all. You don't know how majestic a 3-star entity is either." With that, the Supremacy Epic waved his hand. The surroundings changed. They appeared to have left the secret chamber at once and arrived at a desolate space. This was the space inside the Supreme Pagoda, and Supremacy Epic controlled everything in the Supreme Pagoda. Hence, Lin Feng was not surprised that he could teleport Lin Feng away silently. Lin Feng focused his gaze on the void in front of him. In the pitch-black sky, there were vaguely stone pillars. These stone pillars were infinitely tall, and they were entirely pitch-black. They looked densely packed as they stood tall in the void. Gore! A low and furious roar sounded in the space. Lin Feng looked up and saw an incomparably huge body. Lin Feng could not describe this body. It had wings on its back, and eyes like stars, emitted a ferocious and bloody aura all over. Just its aura almost suffocated Lin Feng. This is the Celestial Devil Ancestor? A 3-star Celestial Devil Emperor. Lin Feng seemed to have thought of something, and his expression changed. The Supremacy Epic had a complicated expression. He nodded and said, "That's right. He's the Celestial Devil Ancestor. Celestial Devils are different from us controllers. All their power comes from the Celestial Devil's true form. The Celestial Devil's true form of a 3-star Celestial Devil Emperor has been condensed to the extreme. A 3-star Celestial Devil Emperor can resist even the epical cataclysm head-on. As long as his Celestial Devil's true form can't be destroyed, we can't kill the Celestial Devil Ancestor." Supremacy Epic, why did you bring a little fellow here? Heh, even a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity like the collision of small Kiliacosms has appeared. Supremacy Epic, this means that you are destined to die. I will definitely be able to break your Supreme Pagoda and return to freedom within 100 years. I will personally capture you and devour you, turning you into nourishment for my Celestial Devil's true form. Ha ha ha. Although Celestial Devil Ancestor was suppressed, he could still sense some of the situation outside. In particular, the collision of the 3 small Kiliacosms made the Celestial Devil Ancestor overjoyed. Lin Feng took a deep breath and sneered, "Celestial Devil Ancestor, since you're so confident and you know everything, do you know that those Celestial Devil disciples and grand disciples of yours have already been purged? Now, even the half of the small Kiliacosm that once belonged to the Celestial Devils has been occupied by our epic alliance." Ha! Celestial Devil Ancestor's expression changed slightly. This was his sore spot. Actually, during this period of time, he had already vaguely sensed something. He did not sense any aura of the celestial devils. Even if there was, it was negligible. As the celestial devil ancestor, he also realized that something might have gone wrong. He just had not confirmed it. But now, Lin Feng's words made the celestial devil ancestor lose all hope. He knew that the celestial devils had probably really been purged. Celestial devil ancestor's chilling gaze stared intently at Lin Feng, and his tone was cold. I have remembered you. You are the direct perpetrator for the destruction of my disciples and granddisciples. Hey, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter even if not a single celestial devil is left. In any case, everything will be reduced to ashes under the epical cataclysm. As long as I'm still around, the celestial devils have not been destroyed. When I escape, I'll just devour your entire epic alliance. The celestial devil ancestor no longer seemed pained. Celestial devils were all selfish, let alone the celestial devil ancestor. He was someone who could sacrifice the entire small kiliocosm for his own cultivation. Even if all the insignificant celestial devils were destroyed, they could not make the celestial devil ancestor feel any guilt. Supremacy Epic shook his head and said, Dark Domain Supremacy. As you can see, this is celestial devil ancestor. He's savage, cold, and powerful. I can barely manage to suppress him. What can you do to deal with the celestial devil ancestor? Indeed, Lin Feng saw that the stone pillars seemed to be transformed from the power of the supreme spatial pagoda. There were also chains that locked the celestial devil ancestor to the stone pillars. At every moment, a powerful force was blasting at celestial devil ancestor. Unfortunately, none of them could cause any damage to the celestial devil ancestor. He had simply the toughest turtle shell in the world, and there was nothing they could do. Celestial devil's true form? Actually, I can give it a try. Lin Feng thought for a moment and said, Huh? What do you mean? Seeing Lin Feng's expression, for the first time, Supremacy Epic felt that he could not see through Lin Feng. Could Lin Feng not see how strong the celestial devil ancestor was? Even so, Lin Feng still felt that there was hope. Alliance leader, I hope you can attack celestial devil ancestor with all your might next. This is because next, I can try to completely confine celestial devil ancestor, rendering him defenseless and equivalent to a live target. You just need to do your best, Alliance leader. If you can injure the celestial devil ancestor, that means there's hope. Lin Feng's words made Supremacy Epic even more bewildered. You can confine the celestial devil ancestor? That's right. Alliance leader. Please be prepared. Lin Feng took a deep breath. Actually, he was not too confident either. However, if he did not attack, if he did not think of a way, he would just watch helplessly as Supremacy Epic's will was beaten down. Then, one day, the celestial devil ancestor would break free and sweep through the epic alliance with the power of a 3-star entity. Lin Feng could not turn a blind eye. Hence, he had to do something. Even if he just tried, he had to do something. Stop time. Lin Feng adjusted his state. At this moment, he did not dare to be careless at all, because he was not facing an ordinary controller, nor an ordinary celestial devil, but the celestial devil ancestor, a 3-star entity. A 3-star celestial devil emperor was almost equivalent to a 3-star supremacy. He was the strongest individual in a small kiliocosm. The strongest individual in the small kiliocosm could only be a 3-star supremacy. As for those above the 3-star supremacy, once they became a kiliocosm sovereign, they would leave immediately. It was impossible for them to stay in the small kiliocosm. This was because the power of the great kiliocosm sovereign was too strong. Even if they did nothing, just their existence would cause the small kiliocosm to collapse. Hence, 3-star entities would be the strongest combatants in the small kiliocosm instead. The celestial devil ancestor in front of them was practically standing at the peak of the small kiliocosm. Even Supremacy Epic, who had the supreme spatial pagoda, could not do anything to the celestial devil ancestor. Buzz. The invisible rules of time enveloped the celestial devil ancestor. Immediately, the celestial devil ancestor sensed it, and a trace of surprise appeared in his eyes. These are the rules of time. The celestial devil ancestor's face was filled with disbelief. However, as the rules of time descended on him, celestial devil ancestor's entire body tensed, and he was completely confined. As for Lin Feng, his face was very pale, and even his entire body was trembling. Even the worlds in his internal kiliocosm domain seemed to be unable to withstand this terrifying burden and collapsed one after another. However, in less than half a breath's time, the celestial devil ancestor had already been confined. Now is the time. Supremacy Epic was overwhelmed with emotions. He already understood the rules of time. Lin Feng actually grasped the rules of time. How shocking was this? How unexpected was this? The Supremacy Epic understood all too well what the rules of time meant. However, looking at Lin Feng's solemn expression, the Supremacy Epic knew that Lin Feng might be under immense pressure. Meanwhile, the celestial devil ancestor seemed to have quietened down all of a sudden and really became a living target. At this moment, the Supremacy Epic naturally would not sit still. Hence, he attacked, and attacked with all his might. Supremacy Epic extended his palm. Immediately, a massive amount of world power erupted in an instant like boiling water. At the same time, a terrifying spatial power sliced through the celestial devil ancestor like an invisible blade. At this moment, the celestial devil ancestor was completely frozen by the rules of time. He could not defend himself at all. He could only rely on his 3-star celestial devil's true form to resist the attack of the Supremacy Epic head-on. Boom! Supremacy Epic struck the celestial devil ancestor hard with his palm. There was even spatial power that was also slashing at the celestial devil ancestor. A great 3-star celestial devil emperor's true form was actually blasted apart by a powerful force. However, that was all. Ha ha ha! You can't kill me. The rules of time. You actually mastered the rules of time. Incredible, truly incredible. If I can capture you and make a deal with the Kiliocosm sovereign of the medium Kiliocosm, won't I have a chance of entering the medium Kiliocosm? The celestial devil ancestor regained his mobility. He was simply too strong, and Lin Feng could no longer withstand such a huge burden. Just now, Supremacy Epic's full power attack had indeed damaged the celestial devil ancestor's true form. However, it was only damaged. At the celestial devil ancestor's realm, his restorative ability was also very terrifying. The part of the celestial devil's true form that was damaged immediately recovered to its original state. In other words, even if Lin Feng used the rules of time to stop the celestial devil ancestor and let Supremacy Epic attack continuously, even if he attacked for decades or centuries, they probably would not be able to cause fatal damage to the celestial devil ancestor. This was the terrifying aspect of a 3-star celestial devil emperor. It was truly despairing. Supremacy Epic shook his head and said, "Dark domain supremacy, as you can see, we can't do anything to the celestial devil ancestor at all. Even if you have the rules of time, supreme rules that even Kiliocosm sovereigns dream of." Supremacy Epic still wanted to say something, but hesitated. He wanted to ask about the rules of time, but what was the point? Even the celestial devil ancestor only wanted to capture Lin Feng to make a deal with the Kiliocosm sovereign. As for comprehending the rules of time himself, that was impossible. Even a 3-star entity could forget about comprehending the rule of time. That was a power that only the great Kiliocosm sovereigns could come into contact with. How did Lin Feng comprehend it? Actually, be it the celestial devil ancestor of Supremacy Epic, neither of them had ever thought of obtaining Lin Feng's secret regarding the rules of time. At their level of cultivation, they all knew very well what was the most important thing to them. The rules of time could not allow one to become the most powerful person overnight, but those great Kiliocosm sovereigns could. So, we can't break through his defense? Lin Feng fell silent. He had already done his best, and even Supremacy Epic had done his best. However, there seemed to be an insurmountable gap between 2-star and 3-star entities. There was no way to cross it at all. The difference between the two parties was just too great. Even if Supremacy Epic had the Supreme Space Pagoda, he could do nothing. He could only rely on the special environment in this Supreme Spatial Passage to suppress the Celestial Devil Ancestor. However, There's still a way. We still have time, Lin Feng suddenly said. He was not disheartened. Even a Kiliacosm sovereign could not dampen Lin Feng's will. Alliance leader. Lin Feng looked at Supremacy Epoch, then asked in a low voice, Alliance leader, do you know what a 3-star supremacy is? What a 3-star supremacy is? Supremacy Epoch was also muttering softly, a sharp glint flashing across his eyes. Lin Feng's question was not groundless. On the contrary, he felt that this question was very important, and even concerned whether he could enter the 3-star realm. All along, Lin Feng had relied on various methods to collect boundary stones and world origin, and then increase the worlds in his internal Kiliacosm domain to proactively improve his strength. From an ordinary 2-star supremacy back then, he slowly rose from the billion level, 10 billion level, 100 billion level, trillion level, to the 100 trillion level supremacy he was in the present. In fact, Lin Feng could easily become a quadrillion level supremacy. It was only a matter of time. However, if he became a quadrillion level supremacy, what came after? Would there be any limit after? Lin Feng did not know. He did not know when he would become a 3-star supremacy. Be it those controllers of the medium Kiliacosm or the Epic Alliance, none of them seemed to be able to answer Lin Feng's questions. Supremacy Epic had experienced 8 epical cataclysms, so he must have seen many 3-star supremacies. After all, the medium Kiliacosm factions would send down 3-star supremacies to fight for the small Kiliacosm origin during the epical cataclysms. Hence Lin Feng's question. What is a 3-star supremacy? This is a good question. I haven't heard this question in a long time. It's very good that you have such comprehension, but there's no time left. Supremacy Epic glanced at Lin Feng. There was appreciation in his eyes, but they also revealed a trace of regret. Alliance leader, please enlighten me. Lin Feng bowed respectfully to Supremacy Epic. A trace of reminiscence appeared on the Supremacy Epic's face, as if he was recalling the distant past. After a long while he said slowly, back then I was prideful. After obtaining the Supreme Pagoda, I felt that I was invincible, and was at least free to do whatever I wanted. However, when the epical cataclysm arrived, some 3-star supremacies descended from the medium Kiliacosm. Only then did I realize how insignificant and ignorant I was. Later, I tried my best to become a 3-star supremacy. However, how difficult is it to reach the realm of 3-star? Just the 3-star boundary stone alone was hard to obtain. But do you know why 3-star boundary stones are so hard to obtain? This concerns the greatest secret of 3-star supremacies. What is a 3-star? Actually, if you have a trillion worlds in your body, you can still become a 3-star supremacy. You can become a 3-star supremacy with 10 trillion worlds, 100 trillion worlds, and so on. In theory, as long as you are a 2-star supremacy, even if you have only 100 million worlds, you can still become a 3-star supremacy. However, it's ultimately just theoretical. In theory, a 3-star supremacy actually has little to do with the number of the internal worlds. As long as one is a 2-star supremacy, they have a chance of becoming a 3-star supremacy. That's because a 3-star supremacy is also known as a half-Kiliacosm supremacy, and possesses the power of half a Kiliacosm. If one obtains the help of a small Kiliacosm or recognition, and can mobilize the power of half a small Kiliacosm, they will naturally become a 3-star supremacy. Lin Feng's eyes widened in disbelief. He had thought of the various powerful aspects of a 3-star supremacy before, and had also heard that a 3-star supremacy had the power of half a Kiliacosm. However, apart from constantly increasing the number of worlds, was there any other way to become a 3-star supremacy? One could become a 3-star supremacy immediately by obtaining the recognition of the small Kiliacosm. Lin Feng was shocked and even a little confused. How can I obtain the recognition or help of the small Kiliacosm? Lin Feng asked again. I don't know. Supremacy Epic shook his head directly. However, it seems to be related to the 3-star boundary stone. It's rumored that the 3-star boundary stone is the highest quality boundary stone that can be nurtured in a small Kiliacosm. The relationship between the boundary stone and a small Kiliacosm is actually very close. It's even the manifestation of the rules of the small Kiliacosm. Once one obtains a 3-star boundary stone, It means that they'll have the ability to communicate with the will of the entire small kiliocosm. Then, it's only a matter of time before they become a 3-star supremacy. Lin Feng nodded. No wonder 3-star boundary stones were so precious. Countless controllers had tried their best to obtain a 3-star boundary stone. It turned out that once one obtained the 3-star boundary stone, the probability of becoming a 3-star supremacy would be very high. In fact, as long as there was enough time, they would be able to become a 3-star supremacy sooner or later. From the looks of it, even those kiliocosm sovereigns probably don't have many 3-star boundary stones. Lin Feng muttered softly. He had already understood somewhat. That's right. Those kiliocosm sovereigns used the 3-star boundary stone as bait to attract countless controllers to work for them. However, in reality, the kiliocosm sovereigns do not have many 3-star boundary stones at all. On the contrary, the kiliocosm sovereigns needed the controllers under their command to constantly conquer small kiliocosms one after another. Apart from fighting for the small kiliocosm origin, they are actually also trying to obtain some 3-star boundary stones. Lin Feng came to a realization. No wonder there were so few 3-star supremacies. Even under the command of the kiliocosm sovereigns, the status of 3-star supremacies was very high. They were powerful and able to conquer one after another small kiliocosm for the kiliocosm sovereigns. Moreover, there were very few 3-star supremacies to begin with. It was extremely difficult to obtain 3-star boundary stones. Other than the 3-star boundary stone, is there no other way to obtain the recognition of a small kiliocosm and become a 3-star supremacy? Lin Feng did not think that this was necessarily the case. After all, true kiliocosm sovereigns did not need to use the 3-star boundary stone. Then, how did they become 3-star supremacies? Of course there's a way. A strange look flashed across Supremacy Epic's eyes. He said in a low voice, for an ordinary controller, they can only become a 3-star supremacy after obtaining a 3-star boundary stone. Moreover, after obtaining a 3-star boundary stone, they will naturally understand their direction of advancement. Relying on the 3-star boundary stone, they will obtain the recognition of a small kiliocosm sooner or later. It's just a matter of time. However, for a true controller who transformed into a universe, there's only one way, and that is to become stronger. If 100 trillion worlds aren't enough, get to a quadrillion. If a quadrillion worlds aren't enough, keep increasing them. One day, when the power of a controller has reached an unimaginable level, and even a move from them can actually destroy countless kiliocosm domains and shake the entire small kiliocosm, they'll naturally become a 3-star supremacy. Many cultivators call it attaining the principle by force. Attaining the principle by force? Lin Feng was stunned, but on careful thought, that seemed to make sense. 3-star experts had always been top-notch entities in small kiliocosms, and were the pinnacle of power. They could no longer advance further. They could even survive the epical cataclysm safely. As long as it was not the final epical cataclysm, a 3-star supremacy could easily survive it. Hence, it was also very appropriate to call it attaining the principle. Ordinary controllers could only obtain a 3-star boundary stone, which was equivalent to a pass to do whatever they wanted in the small kiliocosm. Hence, they could use the rules of the small kiliocosm to obtain the recognition of the small kiliocosm, and thus possess the power of half a kiliocosm. Of course, there would definitely be many differences in the specific operation. Once they obtained the recognition of the small kiliocosm, those controllers could quickly enhance their internal kiliocosm domain and possess the power of half a kiliocosm, thus becoming 3-star supremacies. As for controllers like Lin Feng, who had transformed into a universe, they could not use the 3-star boundary stone at all. Hence, they naturally could not obtain the recognition and help of the small kiliocosm. Then, they could only rely on themselves and their own ability to constantly accumulate strength. When their strength accumulated to the point where even the entire small kiliocosm felt overwhelmed or threatened, the small kiliocosm's recognition would no longer mean anything. At that time, the controller would be a 3-star supremacy, a genuine 3-star supremacy. Moreover, in terms of raw strength, a 3-star supremacy who successfully attained the principle by force would almost always be above the other 3-star supremacies. The only exception was if it was the home ground of a certain 3-star supremacy, who became a 3-star supremacy in said small kiliocosm. Then, they might still be able to fight against a 3-star supremacy who had attained the principle by force. As for those who relied on the 3-star boundary stone to become 3-star supremacies and descended to other small kiliocosms, although they would not be rejected, they would not be able to obtain more support from the small kiliocosm. Naturally, in terms of combat power, they were far inferior to those 3-star supremacies who attained the principle by force. 3-star supremacies who attained the principle by force would not be affected no matter which small kiliocosm they went to. This was because they did not need any recognition from the small kiliocosm. Attaining the principle by force. What a great way! Thank you for clearing my doubts. Alliance leader. Lin Feng was thrilled. He bowed respectfully to Supremacy Epic. This was not common knowledge that could be learned casually. This was the direction of cultivation, and it was extremely precious. This was equivalent to pointing out a path full of potentials for Lin Feng, allowing Lin Feng to see this path clearly and follow it. In the end, he would become a 3-star supremacy. Originally, Lin Feng still had many questions about 3-star supremacies. He had a very limited understanding of them, and was actually exploring things himself. But now, Lin Feng understood the cultivation path of a 3-star supremacy. It undoubtedly saved him many years of hard work and many detours. Alliance leader, may I ask how many worlds are in your body now? Lin Feng asked Supremacy Epic. Supremacy Epic did not conceal it. At this point, what else was there to conceal? I'm limited by the boundary stone in my body, and only have 2 quadrillion worlds. 2 quadrillion worlds. Lin Feng muttered softly, and appeared thoughtful. The power of 2 quadrillion worlds could definitely defeat everyone except the celestial devil ancestor. Be it controllers or celestial devils, none of them could contend with such strength. In particular, the Supremacy Epic also had the Supreme Pagoda, which made him even stronger. He could even use the special environment of the Supreme Spatial Passage to suppress the Celestial Devil Ancestor with the Supreme Pagoda. This was enough to show how powerful Supremacy Epic was. However, even so, Supremacy Epic was still unable to injure the Celestial Devil Ancestor. He could not do anything to the Celestial Devil Ancestor at all. After all, the difference between 2- and 3-star entities was too great. Alliance leader, it's not entirely hopeless for us. I have the rules of time which can accelerate time. In fact, I can rapidly increase my strength in decades or centuries to reach combat power at the quadrillion level. At that time, if the 2 of us join forces, it's not impossible for us to injure the Celestial Devil Ancestor. As long as we can injure the Celestial Devil Ancestor over time, so what if he's the Celestial Devil Ancestor? Death is likely the only outcome for him. A sharp glint flashed across Lin Feng's eyes, surprising even Supremacy Epic. He did not expect that not only was Lin Feng not disheartened, he was thinking of killing the Celestial Devil Ancestor once and for all. This was simply insane. However, the more insane and confident Lin Feng was, the happier the Supremacy Epic was. It had been too long since he had seen such a confident and insane controller. In fact, Lin Feng's performance made the Supremacy Epic sigh with emotion. It was like seeing a shadow of himself back then. Back then, after Supremacy Epic became a 2-star supremacy and obtained the Supreme Pagoda, wasn't he also in high spirits and incredibly prideful, never taking any celestial devils seriously? Even when facing the 3-star Celestial Devil Emperor, the Celestial Devil Ancestor, Supremacy Epic was not afraid at all. However, times had changed. After a few epochs, he had long become disheartened and no longer thought of becoming a 3-star supremacy. He had already lost his drive, and did not have Lin Feng's fighting spirit. You have great ambitions. Dark Domain Supremacy, perhaps you are the only hope of the entire Epic Alliance now. Since you are confident, let's follow your plan. A smile appeared on Supremacy Epic's face. Thank you, Alliance leader. There's no time to lose. I'll begin seclusion now. Once I've made some progress, we'll attack immediately. All right, go ahead. Go ahead. Supremacy Epic waved his hand, and the space warped, sending Lin Feng to a Cultivation's secret chamber. Looking at Lin Feng's disappearing back, a smile appeared on Supremacy Epoch's face. He muttered in a low voice, "Whether we succeed or not, we've at least tried my best. If it fails, I'll send you off. I'll leave everything in the future to you." Supremacy Epoch actually did not have much confidence in Lin Feng. Or rather, he did not think that Lin Feng could succeed at all. Killing the celestial devil ancestor? Supremacy Epoch had thought of countless methods, but what was the outcome? The celestial devil ancestor was still alive and well, and had lived from the first epoch to the 9th epoch, just like him. If the celestial devil ancestor was so easy to kill, Supremacy Epoch would have succeeded long ago. Foolish, foolish. Supremacy Epoch, you want to nurture this little fellow? Heh, it's not like you don't know how difficult it is to become a 3-star supremacy. I was born with extraordinary aptitude and luck. I was born with mastery over the origin of destruction, which was how I could become a 3-star celestial devil emperor. This little fellow, a mere 100 trillion level supremacy, wants to become a 3-star supremacy? That's simply absurd. The celestial devil ancestor saw the entire scene between Lin Feng and Supremacy Epoch just now, but he was not worried at all. Is that so? Celestial devil ancestor, don't worry. Even if we don't succeed, I'll let you have a taste of the supreme pagoda self-destructing at the last moment. There might even be a spatial storm in the supreme spatial passage. I hope you can hold out at that time. At least, I hope you can hold out until the epical cataclysm arrives. Though, it's useless even if you hold out until the epical cataclysm. In the end, everything will be reduced to ashes in the epical cataclysm. Damn it, Supremacy Epoch. I will definitely crush your bones and scatter your ashes. The celestial devil ancestor was roaring furiously, his voice echoing in the void for a long time. Originally, I wanted to cultivate properly after obtaining the resources, but from the looks of it, there's not much time left. If we don't deal with the celestial devil ancestor in 100 years, there's not much point in whether I return to the small kiliacosm. In the secret chamber, Lin Feng did not begin cultivating immediately. Although time was tight, such a short period of time was not an issue. He was carefully analyzing the current situation. The 2 small kiliacosms that collided, the Descenders and the celestial devil ancestor. Actually, in the present, Lin Feng, the Epic Alliance, and even all the local controllers were threatened by these 3 major factions. Of course, there might still be the final epical cataclysm. However, when the epical cataclysm really arrived, the 3 aforementioned factions were actually all useless. They would all be reduced to ashes. Up until now, Lin Feng was only facing these 3 threats for the time being. Among them, the factions of the small kiliacosms were the imminent threat. No one could say for certain how many invaders there would be, and when they would invade. There was also the matter of the Descenders. No one could say for certain when powerful Descenders would come down. However, comparatively speaking, they were actually far less threatening than the Celestial Devil Ancestor. Once the Celestial Devil Ancestor escaped, he would destroy the Epic Alliance first. Then, Lin Feng would definitely be on the Celestial Devil Ancestor's must-kill list. Hence, the Celestial Devil Ancestor must be eliminated. He could only increase his strength as fast as possible, and increase his strength at all costs. If he failed in the end, and the Celestial Devil Ancestor escaped, Lin Feng could still escape through the spacetime imprint and would not really die. However, that would undoubtedly be the worst outcome. Even if he returned to the small kiliacosm, Lin Feng would still have to hide everywhere and be in a constant state of fear, never mind survive the epical cataclysm. We absolutely can't give up unless there's no other choice. And now, Supremacy Epoch is still around to suppress the Celestial Devil Ancestor. It's the best opportunity to kill him. Lin Feng took a deep breath. He had already made up his mind. He would work hard to improve his strength at all costs and kill the Celestial Devil Ancestor. This was the only chance to change the current situation. Hence, Lin Feng closed his eyes and began to cultivate at full force. Currently, there were a total of 1,050 trillion portions of world origin in Lin Feng's internal kiliacosm domain. As for the boundary stones, apart from the 12 high-quality boundary stones, There were also 100 trillion boundary stones, which could probably increase his worlds by several hundred trillion. Lin Feng did not expect to digest all these boundary stones in just 100 years and eventually convert them into his own strength. That was completely impossible. However, he had to do his best. At the very least, becoming a quadrillion-level supremacy should not be an issue. Lin Feng's goal of cultivating at full force was to improve his strength as much as possible. Then let's begin. Time acceleration. Lin Feng took a deep breath. The rules of time enveloped his internal kiliocosm domain. Immediately, time began to accelerate again. Ever since the combat power of Lin Feng's internal kiliocosm domain had increased to 600 trillion, the burden he could withstand became even greater. Even if the acceleration of time was many times greater, he could completely withstand it. Perhaps this would increase the burden. Perhaps this would also cause some worlds to be lost. However, to Lin Feng he had to buy time now. The more his strength increased and the shorter he took, the better. Then everything would be worth it. Hence, under Lin Feng's insane acceleration of time, his internal world sprouted like bamboo shoots after a rain, or the explosion of a small kiliocosm. It was like a newborn small kiliocosm. Worlds or kiliocosm domains began to come into being, and Lin Feng's internal kiliocosm domain was also expanding rapidly. Every day, countless worlds and kiliocosm domains would be born in Lin Feng's internal kiliocosm domain. However, in his massive internal kiliocosm domain, they were nothing much. At this moment, Lin Feng's internal kiliocosm domain had already reached an unimaginable level. Even Lin Feng himself had not paid attention to the changes in his internal kiliocosm domain for a long time. Chaotic Lotus. Lin Feng's consciousness was immersed in the internal kiliocosm domain. He saw the chaotic lotus. Worlds and kiliocosm domains were actually grown from the chaotic lotus. The chaotic lotus was no longer what it used to be. Not only was it deeply rooted in the kiliocosm domain, it could even manifest in battle. It was already comparable to some top-notch supreme treasures. However, what was even more miraculous was that chaotic lotus could devour boundary stones and world origins, and grow worlds and kiliocosm domains. The chaotic lotus was at the center of the entire kiliocosm domain. The chaotic lotus could even be called the mother of the worlds. It was undoubtedly the foundation of all worlds. If the chaotic lotus is destroyed, perhaps the kiliocosm domain will collapse too. Lin Feng suddenly had an epiphany. Having such a deep connection between the chaotic lotus and the internal kiliocosm domain was both a benefit and a drawback. Once something happened to the chaotic lotus, something would happen to the entire internal kiliocosm domain. However, even an expert 10 or 100 times stronger than Lin Feng would probably find it very difficult to destroy the chaotic lotus. Lin Feng could rest assured. The chaotic lotus just had drawbacks, but it was not Lin Feng's weakness. Many worlds were born, and kiliocosm domains were born one after another. Lin Feng's consciousness enveloped the entire internal kiliocosm domain. He saw the birth of worlds, but at the same time, there were simply too many worlds. As Lin Feng often accelerated time, some of the worlds in his internal kiliocosm domain had existed for quite some time. So, there were also worlds being destroyed at every moment. However, these destroyed worlds did not disappear completely like when Lin Feng was battling with others. These naturally destroyed worlds would leave behind a little world origin that would directly fuse into the chaotic lotus. Then, the chaotic lotus would grow another world. This natural cycle allowed the entire internal kiliocosm domain to maintain a complete state. However, in battle they would be lost completely. When the worlds were destroyed, they would be permanently destroyed, unless new world origin could be replenished. At every moment worlds were born, and worlds were destroyed. Lin Feng's consciousness was immersed in this kind of destruction and rebirth. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. After an unknown period of time, Lin Feng finally woke up. What is the difference between my internal kiliocosm domain and the small kiliocosm of the kiliocosm sovereign? Lin Feng muttered softly. This thought also appeared in his mind. Moreover, once this thought appeared, it seemed to be irrepressible and kept growing in a frenzy. All kinds of guesses and thoughts flashed through his mind. Whether Lin Feng became a 3-star supremacy or not, his ultimate goal was actually to become a Kiliacosm sovereign. In the past, Lin Feng did not even dare to think about it. After all, he felt that if he wanted to become a Kiliacosm sovereign, he had to follow the prescribed order from a 1-star supremacy, a 2-star supremacy, to a 3-star supremacy, and advance step by step to solidify his foundation. Lin Feng's idea was not wrong, nor was what he was doing wrong. However, he did not have a clear idea about Kiliacosm sovereigns. Not only did he not have a clear idea, in fact, he only knew a little. He only knew that a true Kiliacosm sovereign would evolve a small Kiliacosm in their body. This was fundamentally different from a pseudo-Kiliacosm sovereign. The evolution of a small Kiliacosm was the foundation of a Kiliacosm sovereign. Or rather, it was the key to becoming a Kiliacosm sovereign. Right now, Lin Feng was thinking. New worlds were born and worlds were destroyed in his internal Kiliacosm domain every day. Everything seemed to repeat itself, and everything was already approaching perfection. What was the difference between it and a true small Kiliacosm? Or rather, what was it missing compared to a true small Kiliacosm? Life, time, space, they all exist. This is a small Kiliacosm. How can it still evolve? Lin Feng was trapped in a strange pattern of thoughts. He was immersed in this consciousness and could not extricate himself. He carefully recalled everything about the small Kiliacosm and compared it to the internal Kiliacosm domain. The boundary stone. At least for the time being, Lin Feng's internal Kiliacosm domain could not produce boundary stones. However, Lin Feng did not think whether boundary stones could be produced was that crucial. Or rather, there should not be any necessary connection between the boundary stones and the small Kiliacosm. If Lin Feng could figure out the structure of the boundary stone and pay a huge price, his internal Kiliacosm domain might also be able to produce boundary stones. However, Lin Feng had a vague feeling that doing so would cause the Kiliacosm sovereign to damage the foundation of their internal small Kiliacosm. It was not worth it. For example, although Kiliacosm sovereigns could all nurture Kiliacosm sovereign-level boundary stones, they were still very rare. What was the reason? It was actually because nurturing a Kiliacosm sovereign-level boundary stone consumed too much energy for a Kiliacosm sovereign. It might even damage their foundation. If a Kiliacosm sovereign did not have a deep foundation, they would not consider nurturing a Kiliacosm sovereign-level boundary stone at all. What exactly is missing? Lin Feng muttered softly. He was trapped in a strange pattern of thoughts. If he could not figure it out, his future path of cultivation would probably be difficult. Destruction and rebirth. Suddenly, inspiration flashed through Lin Feng's mind. Recalling something, he suddenly opened his eyes. Epical cataclysm. Lin Feng opened his eyes, his gaze indifferent as he muttered softly. He finally understood the difference between his internal Kiliacosm domain and a true small Kiliacosm. It was actually the epical cataclysm. In a true small Kiliacosm, no matter which small Kiliacosm it would face the threat of the epical cataclysm. However, how did epical cataclysms come to be? Actually, this was also an indispensable mechanism for the small Kiliacosms. Only the epical cataclysm could allow the small Kiliacosm to undergo metamorphosis again and again, and be reborn after destruction again and again. It might even metamorphose into a medium Kiliacosm. Although Lin Feng had never heard of a small Kiliacosm metamorphosing into a medium Kiliacosm, and there was not even any information about it, Lin Feng was certain that a small Kiliacosm could definitely metamorphose into a medium Kiliacosm. Even if it had never happened, theoretically speaking, it could definitely work. This was the nature of the small Kiliacosm that Lin Feng had comprehended from destruction and rebirth, or rather, the nature of the epical cataclysm. Perhaps the epical cataclysm is not entirely about destruction. It is about rebirth. Destruction is necessary before rebirth. Hence, to a small Kiliacosm, the epical cataclysm is indispensable. Perhaps the key to evolving a small Kiliacosm lies in the epical cataclysm. Lin Feng's eyes lit up. He seemed to have understood the key to the small Kiliacosm's evolution. However, Lin Feng knew nothing about how epical cataclysms came about. In all likelihood, very few people knew. Moreover, Lin Feng had never seen the epical cataclysm before. No matter how many stories he had heard from others, they were what others had seen with their own eyes, not what Lin Feng had experienced personally. The epical cataclysm. Lin Feng muttered softly. Perhaps to him, the epical cataclysm was not a disaster, but an opportunity. Days passed. The chaotic lotus was still growing worlds or kiliocosm domains in Lin Feng's internal kiliocosm domain. As long as there was sufficient world origin and boundary stones, the chaotic lotus could give rise to worlds or kiliocosm domains at all times. Moreover, Lin Feng was still accelerating time under the maximum burden. Hence, the speed at which worlds were born in Lin Feng's internal kiliocosm domain was also very fast. In an entire year, Lin Feng's internal world had increased by about 10 trillion. This was greatly beyond Lin Feng's expectations. Originally, he thought that gaining several trillion worlds was already very good. He did not expect time acceleration to be so effective. Or rather, it was because Lin Feng's internal kiliocosm domain was too strong and could accelerate time faster, that his combat power could increase by 10 trillion worlds a year. 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. Before he realized it, a decade had passed. A mere decade was just a blink of an eye. Many controllers might take a longer nap. However, a decade was crucial to Lin Feng. There are 750 trillion worlds. Lin Feng muttered softly, and a strange glint flashed across his eyes. In the past, his internal kiliocosm domain only had 600 trillion worlds. Now, it had reached 750 trillion worlds. Without a doubt, in just 10 years, Lin Feng's internal kiliocosm domain had actually gained 150 trillion worlds. Originally, it was supposed to increase by 10 trillion worlds a year, so there should only be 100 trillion worlds in 10 years. However, Lin Feng had forgotten that his time acceleration had always been accelerating time at the limit of Lin Feng's internal kiliocosm domain. Hence, as Lin Feng's internal kiliocosm domain constantly increased in strength, the burden he could withstand became greater and greater. The acceleration of time naturally became faster and faster, adding an additional 50 trillion worlds in the same period of time. However, this was only a good start. An increase of 150 trillion worlds in 10 years was already very fast for Lin Feng, but it was not enough. At the very least, Lin Feng's worlds had not even reached a quadrillion. Continue. Hence, Lin Feng continued to cultivate and accelerated time to the fastest speed without regard for consumption. In another decade, Lin Feng's internal kiliocosm domain reached 950 trillion worlds. In this decade, the number of worlds in Lin Feng's internal kiliocosm domain had actually increased by 200 trillion. Boom! Lin Feng's internal kiliocosm domain shook slightly. Not long after the second decade had passed, Lin Feng's internal kiliocosm domain finally reached 1 quadrillion worlds. 1 quadrillion worlds! Lin Feng did not expect to reach a quadrillion worlds so quickly. It had to be known that he had only cultivated in seclusion for over 20 years. I can give it a try now. Lin Feng knew very well that no matter how much he focused on cultivating, it was impossible for him to become a 3-star supremacy in 100 years. However, he did not think that he could be lucky enough to become a 3-star supremacy in the first place. He just wanted to increase his strength to the point where they could at least injure the celestial devil ancestor. Hence, Lin Feng immediately stood up and left the secret chamber to find supremacy epic. Although he had left the secret chamber, it did not mean that Lin Feng had already stopped cultivating. On the contrary, Lin Feng was still cultivating. However, he did not need to pay attention to it. In his internal kiliocosm domain with world origin and boundary stones, worlds would be born continuously. It was just that without time acceleration, the speed at which worlds were born would not be so fast. Swoosh! Lin Feng met supremacy epic. Huh? You've become a quadrillion-level supremacy. Supremacy epic was very surprised. In just over 20 years, Lin Feng had leaped from a 100 trillion-level supremacy to a quadrillion-level supremacy. Was this possible? Supremacy epic was experienced and knowledgeable. He was an entity who was born in the first epoch and had seen all kinds of geniuses, including even top geniuses of the medium chiliocosm. However, not one of them could compare to Lin Feng. It was as if the term genius had lost meaning in front of Lin Feng. What was a genius? At the thought of Lin Feng's cultivation speed, geniuses would despair to the point of suffocation. That's right. I've become a quadrillion-level supremacy. Hence, I left the secret chamber, preparing to give it another try. As long as we can injure the celestial devil ancestor, there's hope for everything. Injuring the celestial devil ancestor. Supremacy Epic still did not hold much hope, even though Lin Feng had a quadrillion worlds. However, Supremacy Epic still led Lin Feng to the place where the celestial devil ancestor was suppressed. At this moment, the celestial devil ancestor appeared very calm. When he saw Lin Feng, a strange expression flashed across his face. A quadrillion worlds. Lad, in just 20 years your strength has increased by a lot. Have you been accelerating time? That's right, the rules of time are just so miraculous. However, it's useless. There's not much time left. When I escape, you won't have a chance. The celestial devil ancestor's sinister laugh rang out, making one's scalp tingle. That's right. It's precisely because I know that there's not much time left that I'm doing my best to cultivate. I'll also do my best to eliminate you. Lin Feng was not intimidated by the celestial devil ancestor. Instead, he took a deep breath and looked at Supremacy Epic. Attack! Lin Feng growled. At the next moment, Lin Feng did not hesitate at all. He instantly unleashed the rules of time, which enveloped the celestial devil ancestor like an invisible net. Stop time! As Lin Feng's strength increased substantially, he was no longer a 100 trillion level supremacy, but had entered the realm of the quadrillion level supremacy. His internal chiliocosm domain continued to expand. The worlds were dense as sand, and there were simply countless of them. Buzz. The rules of time enveloped the celestial devil ancestor. Even though he was already prepared this time, facing the rules of time, the celestial devil ancestor was still helpless and was instantly frozen. The burden is still huge, but I should be able to hold out for half a breath. Lin Feng relaxed. Reality had proven that the increase in his internal strength was indeed effective. It might not appear to be very effective, but in reality, being able to improve the duration of stopping time by a little was already very good. To a certain extent, it could even change the situation of the battle. Seeing that Lin Feng had frozen the celestial devil ancestor, Supremacy Epic did not hesitate. He used the same method again, and still unleashed his strongest power to strike the celestial devil ancestor hard. The two absolute forces collided. As before, they seemed to be on par. When Supremacy Epic's power struck the celestial devil ancestor with all its might, it could only destroy a little of his celestial devil's true form. In fact, that portion of the celestial devil's true form could even recover very quickly. He could not injure the celestial devil ancestor at all. This was also the terrifying aspect of a 3-star celestial devil. From an emperor to an ancestral devil, all celestial devils cultivated the celestial devil's true form. Towards the end, the celestial devil's true form would become more and more formidable. Be it in terms of strength, defense, or restorative ability, they would all become extremely formidable. Controllers who had never truly fought a 3-star emperor would never know how terrifying a 3-star emperor was. In fact, the legendary ancestral devils were entities comparable to the great chiliocosm sovereigns. There were even fewer of them than chiliocosm sovereigns, but almost every ancestral devil was an undying entity. There's still no effect. Supremacy Epic shook his head. He had long expected this outcome. It was just that he could not bear to disappoint Lin Feng, so he cooperated fully with Lin Feng. But now, it seemed like they should wake up from the dream. No matter how hard they tried, they could not injure the celestial devil ancestor. Ha ha ha! It's useless. No matter how you attack, it's useless. Soon. In a few decades, I will be able to escape. At that time, you won't even have a chance. The celestial devil ancestor was not frozen anymore. When he looked at Lin Feng and Supremacy Epic, a trace of cold killing intent flashed across his eyes. Again. This time, I'll attack together with the alliance leader. Lin Feng shouted. He was unwilling to accept this. This time, he would attack together with Supremacy Epic. His quadrillion-level world power was only slightly inferior to Supremacy Epic. In the next moment, Lin Feng attacked, and so did Supremacy Epic. Lin Feng stopped time to freeze the Celestial Devil Ancestor first. Even though he needed to use the world power in his internal Kiliacosm domain, and could only stop the Celestial Devil Ancestor for an instant, it was enough for Lin Feng. Boom! As the two of them attacked together, their power immediately increased explosively. They enveloped the Celestial Devil Ancestor like a ball of light. The terrifying world power tore at the Celestial Devil Ancestor's true form in a frenzy. Ha ha ha! It's useless. It's all useless. Even if you join forces, you can't do anything to me. The Celestial Devil Ancestor laughed sinisterly with a smug expression. Supremacy Epic's expression was very downcast, as if he had already expected this. After all, he had suppressed the Celestial Devil Ancestor in the Supreme Pagoda for so long. How could he not have thought of ways? On the contrary, Supremacy Epic had thought of many methods. However, reality was very harsh. He could not do anything to the Celestial Devil Ancestor. Now, when Lin Feng and Supremacy Epic had joined forces, the power of the two of them added up to a total of 3 quadrillion worlds, yet they still could not do anything to the Celestial Devil Ancestor. Wait! Lin Feng suddenly spoke, his gaze fixed on the Celestial Devil Ancestor. Ha! Supremacy Epic looked at Lin Feng, not knowing what Lin Feng had discovered. Lin Feng, on the other hand, stared intently at the Celestial Devil Ancestor. His eyes were still, as if he was about to see through the Celestial Devil Ancestor. Even the Celestial Devil Ancestor was a little uncomfortable. Lad, it's useless even if you stare at me all day. The Celestial Devil Ancestor roared, his terrifying aura pressing towards Lin Feng. Supremacy Epic mobilized the Supreme Pagoda and blocked it. However, Lin Feng was not afraid at all. Instead, a strange smile appeared on his lips. You're injured. Ha! As soon as Lin Feng finished speaking, the expressions of both Supremacy Epic and the Celestial Devil Ancestor changed abruptly. He's injured. Supremacy Epic also stared intently at the Celestial Devil Ancestor, but he could not tell where the Celestial Devil Ancestor was injured. Or rather, the injuries had all recovered. The Celestial Devil Ancestor's expression changed slightly, before he calmed down. He sneered. Of course I was injured, but such a minor injury had long recovered. I'm a 3-star Celestial Devil Emperor. My restorative ability is beyond your imagination. Even Supremacy Epic shook his head and said, Dark Domain Supremacy. It's normal for the Celestial Devil Ancestor to be injured. His restorative ability is very astonishing. If our power isn't overwhelming to him, it would be almost impossible to injure him. However, Lin Feng acted as if he did not hear Supremacy Epic's words. He continued to stare intently at the Celestial Devil Ancestor and said word by word, No, you're injured. Moreover, you haven't recovered. At least not yet. At this moment, Supremacy Epic also seemed to see that Lin Feng was not joking. He hasn't recovered? How is this possible? Even Supremacy Epic could not quite believe it. Absolutely true. I have the rules of time and have already marked him with a time imprint. No change in his Celestial Devil's true form can escape my detection. Previously, when Alliance leader attacked alone, he could indeed recover very quickly. However, just now, when the two of us joined forces, the Celestial Devil Ancestor was injured. Although only 10 layers of his Celestial Devil's true form had disappeared, they had disappeared permanently and could not recover. Supremacy Epic was very moved, so he used all his power again and said, Dark Domain Supremacy. Let's do it again. Lin Feng nodded as well. The two of them joined forces again, and a terrifying force struck Celestial Devil Ancestor hard. Boom! This time, even Supremacy Epic could see it. As expected, the 15 layers of his Celestial Devil's true form have disappeared permanently. The Celestial Devil Ancestor is really injured. Supremacy Epic was overjoyed. A dozen or so layers of Celestial Devil's true form were simply negligible to the current Celestial Devil Ancestor. Even if he stood still and allowed Lin Feng and Supremacy Epic to attack madly for 1,000 or 10,000 years, they would not be able to damage the Celestial Devil Ancestors' foundation. However, Supremacy Epic was still very excited, because this meant that the Celestial Devil Ancestor was not really invulnerable, nor was he really undying and indestructible. He also had weaknesses and he could also be injured. Then this was hope. Killing intent filled Celestial Devil Ancestor's eyes, but he laughed coldly. Indeed, even if they could destroy 10,000 layers of Celestial Devil's true form every day, so what? To the Celestial Devil Ancestor, it was nothing. Moreover, even when Lin Feng and Supremacy Epic joined forces now, they could not destroy 10,000 layers of Celestial Devil's true form in one day at all. You're afraid. Lin Feng was still indifferent. He said coldly, "You're afraid. How can a dignified Celestial Devil Ancestor, a 3-star Celestial Devil Emperor, be afraid? That's right, you're afraid of my growth. You're afraid that I'll reach the power of 2 quadrillion, 3 quadrillion, or even stronger in the future." Supremacy Epic did not say anything. He only watched the confrontation between Lin Feng and the Celestial Devil Ancestor silently. Supremacy Epic knew everything that the Celestial Devil Ancestor had said just now. However, he also knew that as long as they could injure the Celestial Devil Ancestor, it would be success and hope. The Celestial Devil Ancestor was not invincible. He also had weaknesses, he could also be injured, and in fact, he could also fall. In the present, the Celestial Devil Ancestor was indeed very strong. Even if he sat still and allowed Lin Feng and the Supremacy Epic to attack, the Celestial Devil's true form he lost was simply a drop in the bucket. However, the Supremacy Epic knew that Lin Feng could grow, and the speed at which Lin Feng grew was astonishing. Supremacy Epic, I will cultivate with all my might. Now, let's see if my strength increases faster, or if the Celestial Devil Ancestor's true form is stronger. Lin Feng turned around and left. It was actually meaningless to continue attacking now. It was meaningless to make the Celestial Devil Ancestor lose hundreds or even 1,000 layers of his Celestial Devil's true form every day. Previously, Lin Feng had spent 20 years to increase his combat power by 400 trillion worlds. Moreover, almost every year, the number of worlds born in Lin Feng's internal kiliocosm domain would increase, and the speed would become faster and faster. In the past, he had gained 100 trillion worlds in 10 years, and now he had gained 200 trillion worlds. The speed would continue to increase. This was especially the case when the burden Lin Feng's internal kiliocosm domain could withstand increased. The acceleration of time would become faster, and the speed at which worlds were born would also increase. Hence, in the 3rd decade, Lin Feng gained 300 trillion worlds. Now, he had the combat power of a total of 1.3 quadrillion worlds. In the 4th decade, Lin Feng gained 500 trillion worlds, and his internal kiliocosm domain reached the combat power of 1.8 quadrillion worlds. In the 5th decade, Lin Feng gained 800 trillion worlds. His internal kiliocosm domain reached 2.6 quadrillion worlds in terms of combat power. The 6th decade, the 7th decade, the 8th decade, the speed at which Lin Feng's internal kiliocosm domain improved kept becoming faster. As the number of internal worlds increased, even the acceleration of time was increasing at every moment. The burden his internal kiliocosm could withstand was also becoming greater and greater. Lin Feng's strength expanded wildly like a balloon. Boom! Suddenly, everything shook. It seemed like the entire Supreme Pagoda was shaking. Ha ha ha, Supremacy Epic. You can't trap me anymore. In at most 3 years, I will definitely escape. At that time, you and that brat Dark Domain Supremacy will both die without a burial place. Ha ha ha. The Celestial Devil Ancestor's voice almost spread throughout the entire Supreme Pagoda. Supremacy Epic's expression changed as he stared intently at the Celestial Devil Ancestor. Right now, he was doing his best to suppress him. However, 80 years had already passed. Under the effects of the collision of the 3 small kiliocosms and the tremors of the Supreme Spatial Passage, the Celestial Devil Ancestor seized the opportunity and kept trying to break free from the suppression of the Supreme Spatial Pagoda. And they only had 100 years. The Celestial Devil Ancestor would definitely be able to break free from his restraints in 100 years. And now, there were no longer 100 years left. In fact, the exact time was already known. It was 83 years, or even less. Now, 80 years had already passed. There were only 3 years or less left before the celestial devil ancestor would definitely be able to escape. In the end, I'm still a little too late. If I had more time, if the 3 small kiliocosms had not collided, if... Supremacy Epic shook his head helplessly. He had already experienced the epical cataclysm 8 times. He had lived from the first epic to the end of the 9th epic. How could he not see things clearly? How could there be what-ifs in the world? A failure was a failure. There was no excuse. Actually, Supremacy Epic was already prepared to fall. In fact, when he learned that he would not be able to survive the 9th epical cataclysm, Supremacy Epic was already prepared. That was why he sacrificed himself to suppress the celestial devil ancestor. To Supremacy Epic, falling now was actually not much different from falling in the epical cataclysm. He would be reduced to ashes all the same. However, it would be a real pity if Lin Feng died. Supremacy Epic had never seen such an astonishingly talented controller. Occasionally, Supremacy Epic would even feel that there was hope on Lin Feng. That was not the hope of becoming a 3-star supremacy. Even if he became a 3-star supremacy, Supremacy Epic would not think that it was hope. What was hope? To the Supremacy Epic, someone that could survive the epical cataclysm would be true hope. This was the hope on Lin Feng. Unfortunately, all hope was dashed now. Forget it. I'll send Dark Domain Supremacy off. Just as Supremacy Epic made the decision and was about to send Lin Feng off, he suddenly realized that Lin Feng had already walked out of the secret chamber. Dark Domain Supremacy, you? Supremacy Epic's expression was a little bewildered, because he realized that he could not understand Lin Feng's strength at all now. Lin Feng seemed to be shrouded in a mysterious aura. It was daunting even to Supremacy Epic. Lin Feng's expression was calm. He nodded and said indifferently, "Alliance leader, I didn't disappoint. In 80 years, I've finally improved by another level. Now, I've already reached 7 quadrillion worlds of combat power. Although I'm a little lacking, it's still worth a try against the celestial devil ancestor." Boom! Lin Feng's words undoubtedly set off a storm in Supremacy Epic's mind. 7 quadrillion worlds. Was this possible? In just 80 years, no, only 60 years had passed since the last time Lin Feng's combat power had increased from 1 quadrillion worlds to the current 7 quadrillion worlds. How terrifying was this? On average, that was an improvement of 1 quadrillion worlds every 10 years. Even the Supremacy Epic could not quite believe it. He stared intently at Lin Feng, as if he wanted to see through Lin Feng. Supremacy Epic knew that Lin Feng was extraordinary. He had transformed into a universe, and had a chance of becoming a true kiliocosm sovereign in the future. Moreover, he had grasped the rules of time. That was a mysterious type of rules that even kiliocosm sovereigns could not grasp. Even if all kinds of resources were gathered, and Lin Feng's cultivation speed was very fast, it was still so fast that it was unbelievable. In reality, forget about Supremacy Epic, even Lin Feng himself was very surprised. It had far exceeded his own expectations. By the 5th decade, Lin Feng's internal kiliocosm domain only had 2.6 quadrillion worlds. However, in those 10 years, Lin Feng acquired 800 trillion worlds. The magnitude and speed of increase were simply unbelievable. Then, in the 6th decade, Lin Feng gained another 1.1 quadrillion worlds, and his internal kiliocosm domain reached the combat power of 3.7 quadrillion worlds. In the 7th decade, Lin Feng's number of worlds had increased by 1.5 quadrillion. His internal kiliocosm domain had reached the combat power of a total of 5.2 quadrillion worlds. In the 8th decade, Lin Feng had gained 1.8 quadrillion worlds, and his internal kiliocosm domain had reached the combat power of exactly 7 quadrillion worlds. If Lin Feng was given more time, even just a few decades, his internal kiliocosm domain would reach an unimaginable level. Even with just the current 7 quadrillion worlds, Lin Feng had a vague feeling of sublimation. It was as if he could vaguely sense something in the small kiliocosm through the Supreme Pagoda and the Supreme Spatial Passage. However, there was a barrier. It seemed like the barrier of the supreme spatial passage was too great, or that Lin Feng's current strength was still a little lacking. Hence, he had yet to completely sense it, so he had not sublimed. However, Lin Feng had no choice but to exit seclusion. He had already sensed that the celestial devil ancestor was about to escape. In at most 3 years, Lin Feng would no longer be able to focus on seclusion. The celestial devil ancestor was a huge threat. He had to be dealt with. Supremacy Epic quickly came back to his senses. Even though he was still shocked at this moment, he had a faint trace of anticipation. Back then, he had the combat power of 2 quadrillion worlds, and Lin Feng had the combat power of 1 quadrillion worlds, but they could not do anything to the celestial devil ancestor. They could only make the celestial devil ancestor suffer a little loss, which was almost irrelevant. But now, Lin Feng had become a supremacy with several quadrillion worlds. Success or failure depends on this. Supremacy Epic took a deep breath and stared intently at the celestial devil ancestor. At this moment, the celestial devil ancestor seemed to have also sensed Lin Feng's rapid improvement in strength. He no longer roared wildly. Instead, he seemed to have enhanced his celestial devil's true form to the extreme. The celestial devil ancestor seemed to have already sensed a faint threat from Lin Feng. Lin Feng also took a deep breath. The surging world power in his body seemed ready to spew out. However, Lin Feng suppressed the restlessness in his heart firmly and waited for it to calm. Buzz. In the next moment, Lin Feng reached out and tapped gently. The rules of time enveloped the celestial devil ancestor in an instant. Without the rules of time, Lin Feng would not possibly have the confidence to deal with the celestial devil ancestor, even if the other party was injured. However, with the rules of time, the celestial devil ancestor would become a live target. It would not even be possible for him to defend himself, which was equivalent to weakening his strength by a lot. This was the effect of the rules of time. They could weaken the opponent by several times. Attack! Lin Feng growled. Immediately, the Supremacy Epic understood and immediately unleashed his full power. The power of 2 quadrillion worlds, in addition to the power of spatial severance, erupted instantly. However, Lin Feng's commotion was even greater. In the next moment, the originally calm world power in his body erupted instantly with a thought. The mighty world power was like a flood, overwhelming and sweeping through everything, submerging and annihilating everything. The world power of the two of them fused together and blasted towards the celestial devil ancestor. This was their strongest strike. Success or failure depended on this. Boom! Terrifying explosions sounded, and shockwaves spread continuously. Even if they were in the supreme spatial pagoda, such a terrifying collision of power caused the supreme spatial pagoda to shake incessantly. Supremacy Epic stared intently at the celestial devil ancestor, as did Lin Feng. Whether the two of them were confident or suspicious previously, at this point, there was no way out. If they failed, there would be no more time. Crack. Suddenly, there seemed to be a crisp sound from the center of the explosion. Right on the heels of that, the dust settled, revealing the figure of the celestial devil ancestor. At this moment, the celestial devil ancestor's expression was dark, and his entire body was even trembling. His massive celestial devil's true form was densely covered in cracks like glass. No, no, how is this possible? The celestial devil ancestor was still muttering softly, his face filled with disbelief. Crack. In the next moment, there was another crisp sound. Another crack appeared on the celestial devil ancestor's body, and this crack was like the last straw that broke the camel's back. As the cracks appeared, the massive true form of the celestial devil ancestor collapsed with a bang. No! The celestial devil ancestor roared furiously, trying to stop the celestial devil's true form from giving out. However, it was useless. Once the celestial devil's true form gave out, it collapsed in a frenzy like an avalanche. From 100 million, a billion, 10 billion, 100 billion, a trillion, Supremacy Epic and Lin Feng both looked at the scene in front of them in a daze. The sight of the celestial ancestor's true form collapsing was too magnificent. Even the two of them were very shocked. The two of them witnessed this scene with their own eyes. In just the span of half a breath, the celestial devil ancestor's true form had lost more than 1,000,000,000,000 layers. That was 1,000,000,000,000 layers, which was equivalent to losing the power of 1,000,000,000,000-level supremacy in an instant. The celestial devil ancestor's true form was incomparably abundant, but losing 1,000,000,000,000 layers of his true form at once still pained him greatly. In particular, this was after just one strike from Lin Feng and Supremacy Epoch. If 1,000,000,000,000 layers of celestial devil's true form would be lost with a single strike, how many times could Lin Feng and Supremacy Epoch attack in a day? 100 times or 1,000 times? Even if Lin Feng and Supremacy Epoch needed time to recover, and Lin Feng's internal kiliocosm domain was also enduring a huge burden, if they attacked continuously, attacking 1,000 times a day was not a problem. 1,000 times would make him lose 1,000,000,000,000 layers of celestial devil's true form. How terrifying was this? Even if it was the celestial devil ancestor, how long could he hold out for? 10 days or 20 days? At this moment, the celestial devil ancestor was truly afraid. He was afraid because he could already vaguely sense the aura of death. It felt as if death was already approaching him. He never would have thought that at the critical moment, when there were only 3 years before he could escape, he would actually encounter the threat of death. Ha ha ha, there's hope. There's really hope. Celestial devil ancestor. Your death is imminent. Supremacy Epoch laughed aloud. In all the years he had suppressed celestial devil ancestor, he had never been so carefree as he was now. The celestial devil ancestor was already at the end of his rope. It was only a matter of time before he fell. Kill! Lin Feng did not hesitate at all. He continued to use the rules of time and bombarded the celestial devil ancestor in a frenzy. He did not want any accidents to happen, even if there was no hope for the celestial devil ancestor at this moment. No, no, how can I die here? Impossible! The celestial devil ancestor's shrill screams echoed through the supreme pagoda for a long time. Lin Feng was overjoyed. He realized that he had underestimated the energy contained in the true form of a 3-star celestial devil emperor. Someone who could become a 3-star celestial devil emperor naturally had energy massive to the extreme. Supremacy Epoch did not fight with Lin Feng for the celestial devil's true form, for even if he did, what was the point? It was meaningless. Only by leaving them for Lin Feng might Lin Feng be able to continue improving. Lin Feng had abundant boundary stones now, and abundant world origin as well. However, his world origin simply paled in comparison to the true form of the celestial devil ancestor in front of him. Lin Feng did not waste any of it. He devoured the true form of the celestial devil ancestor in a frenzy, and quickly converted it into world origin. The rich world origin filled Lin Feng with a sense of abundance. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, 4 days. As the days passed, Lin Feng realized that the celestial devil ancestor's voice had already disappeared. In its place was intermittent pleading. The celestial devil ancestor was begging for mercy. In just a few days, the current celestial devil ancestor's true form had suffered heavy losses, and was even about to fall to the level of a 2-star emperor. However, Lin Feng still had no intention of letting the celestial devil ancestor off. Lin Feng, I curse you to die a horrible death. After 5 days, 8 days, 10 days, on the 10th day, the celestial devil ancestor suddenly cursed madly. A dignified 3-star entity actually felt the need to curse. It was enough to show how terrified celestial devil ancestor was. That's right. He was fearful. He was afraid. This was because today, just now, the celestial devil ancestor's true form had finally been destroyed to the extreme, or rather, a critical point. With a plop, the celestial devil ancestor's realm fell completely. To celestial devils, strength was the foundation, and the foundation of strength was basically the celestial devil's true form. After losing the celestial devil's true form to a certain extent, their realm would drop. Now, the celestial devil ancestor's expression was sinister and distorted. He looked like a true devil as he glared at Lin Feng and cursed hysterically. However, it was useless. He had already gone from a famed 3-star celestial devil emperor to a mere 2-star celestial devil emperor. Even if he was still a top 2-star celestial devil emperor, it was nothing much. Even if Lin Feng did not use the rules of time, just by relying on the suppression of Supremacy Epic's Supreme Pagoda, and attacks from Lin Feng's combat power of 7 quadrillion worlds, the Celestial Devil Ancestor would not be able to hold out for long. Lin Feng did not hear the Celestial Devil Ancestor's curses at all. Even if he did, he would not care. It was just a dying struggle and a verbal battle. What could it do? He was now immersed in a special realm. He absorbed the Celestial Devil's true form of the Celestial Devil Ancestor in a frenzy, and converted it into world origin rapidly. A large amount of world origin surged through Lin Feng's body. Originally, Lin Feng had 10 million portions of world origin. Now, he had attained tens of millions of world origins, and it was still increasing to an unimaginable level. Lin Feng also had abundant boundary stones. At this moment, he had sufficient world origin, and was improving rapidly. Lin Feng already had a vague sense of comprehension, but he was still a little lacking. After 11 days, 12 days, 13 days, 14 days, finally, on the 14th day, the Celestial Devil Ancestor could not hold out anymore. The massive Celestial Devil's true form had long disappeared. It transformed into the last bit of energy and flew into Lin Feng's body. Boom! However, it was this bit of energy that caused Lin Feng's internal kiliocosm domain to shake wildly. It was because this was not ordinary energy, but the true foundation of the Celestial Devil Ancestor, the true core, the origin of destruction. Back then, the Celestial Devil Ancestor was destined to be born. He was the origin of destruction naturally born in a small kiliocosm. In reality, Celestial Devils were born for the purpose of destruction, and were themselves a part of a small kiliocosm. The origin of destruction contained the origin of a small kiliocosm. In fact, the origin of destruction was part of the small kiliocosm origin. It was just a rather special type of origin that specialized in destruction. Lin Feng was not a celestial devil. He did not have the nature of destruction in the first place. Hence, after this massive origin of destruction entered Lin Feng's internal kiliocosm domain, it appeared out of place. It was almost world-shattering, sending shockwaves through Lin Feng's internal kiliocosm domain. However, regardless of whether Lin Feng's internal kiliocosm domain was turned upside down, he had no intention of expelling this origin of destruction at all. There was even a trace of joy on his face. Destruction. Rebirth. Lin Feng muttered softly. His current aura seemed to be expanding at every moment. For some reason, his internal worlds were increasing wildly. Even if they were destroyed by the origin of destruction, they would be converted into world origin and fused into the chaotic lotus. Supremacy Epic looked at Lin Feng in shock. Lin Feng's current aura was like a volcanic eruption, and there seemed to be an extremely terrifying power hidden within. That power actually made even Supremacy Epic feel terrified. It was as if even the Supreme Pagoda could not protect his safety. He had never even felt this way, even when facing the Celestial Devil Ancestor back then. Could he be about to undergo metamorphosis? Supremacy Epic's eyes widened in disbelief. He knew that Lin Feng already had 7 quadrillion worlds. This was already enough to shock him, but could someone with 7 quadrillion worlds metamorphose into a 3-star supremacy? Supremacy Epic was still a little doubtful. However, from the looks of it, Lin Feng seemed to have comprehended something. It was just that in the Supreme Pagoda or in the Supreme Spatial Passage, there were actually obstacles to Lin Feng's metamorphosis. Since the Celestial Devil Ancestor had already fallen, Supremacy Epic had nothing to worry about. The greatest threat had already disappeared. Hence, with a thought, Supremacy Epic controlled the Supreme Pagoda and broke through the Supreme Spatial Passage, instantly exiting it. Boom! How astonishing was the power of the Supreme Spatial Pagoda. It could almost be considered the number 1 supreme treasure in the small kiliocosm. Back then, relying on the Supreme Spatial Pagoda, Supremacy Epic did not even fear a 3-star entity. Hence, as soon as the Supreme Spatial Pagoda appeared, it immediately shook the surroundings. What is that? A pagoda? A treasure has appeared? Coincidentally, there were many controllers and some strange lifeforms where the Supreme Pagoda appeared. However, due to the terrifying aura of the Supreme Pagoda, no one approached. Ha! As soon as the Supreme Spatial Pagoda left the Supreme Spatial Passage, Lin Feng suddenly opened his eyes and looked up at the void. The origin of destruction in his body seemed to have turned hot all of a sudden, vaguely resonating with an even more terrifying origin of destruction in the void. Destruction. Without destruction, how can there be a rebirth? Alliance leader, please open the Supreme Spatial Pagoda. Whether I succeed or fail, I have to give it a try. Lin Feng took a deep breath and said to Supremacy Epic. Supremacy Epic looked at Lin Feng's solemn expression. He could also vaguely guess Lin Feng's state. Currently, Lin Feng was at an extremely unstable but critical moment. At this moment, Lin Feng was very strong but also very fragile. Although he did not know what was going on with Lin Feng, Supremacy Epic guessed that Lin Feng had probably reached the critical point and was about to metamorphose. Dark Domain Supremacy. How far have you come? That's right. If I cross it, I might be able to find what I want. Supremacy Epic nodded. With a wave of his hand, the door of the Supreme Spatial Pagoda opened. Lin Feng no longer hesitated and stepped outside.